Why more companies need a social recruiting manager. Next on the RecTech podcast.
Welcome to RecTech, the podcast where recruiting and technology intersect. Each month, you'll hear from vendors shaping the recruiting world, along with recruiters who'll tell you how they use technology to hire talent. Now, here's your host, the mad scientist of online recruiting, Chris Russell.
All right, welcome to RecTech, the only podcast that helps employers and recruiters connect with more candidates through technology-inspired conversations. You know, recruiting is getting more technical in nature these days, so it's important for recruiters to stay up to date on the new tools and tactics for recruiting success. Today's show is a recruiter edition. But first, the RecTech podcast is sponsored in part by HireTool, the recruiter's best friend. HireTool's AI engine is a personal sourcing assistant that works for you 24/7. Check out their new version 3 with a new reporting dashboard, email marketing campaigns that let you automate and track email response rates. They've also redesigned the toolbox area to include more automation and even updated the Boolean string functionality as well. So if you want to find more candidates online, check out HireTool. Find them on the web at hiretool.com. That's HireTual.com. And just a few shout outs before we get started today. Shout out to Iker Juswe, I think that's how you pronounce it. He's a recruiter and listener from the UK. He enjoyed listening to Angie Veros speaking on last week's show, particularly around the persistence is one of the most important tools in recruitment discussions that we had. So appreciate the shout out on Twitter and Facebook, Iker. Thanks for listening, and keep those comments coming. And a reminder, this show is now syndicated on the HR Podcasters Network. If you head over to hrpodcasters.com, you can see the show and discover 24 more that cover nearly every topic in HR and recruiting. We just added a couple of new shows in the past week. Sourcing Challenge Show, which is a UK-based one, and Lori Rudiman's Let's Fix Work podcast is also now syndicated on there. So a lot of great stuff happening there. If you want to tune in to turn on your talent, head over to hrpodcasters.com. All right, let's get to our guest here. Lindsay Parks is a talent acquisition social media specialist at a major insurance company in the Northeast. She's a multifaceted employer branding professional with a versatile background in the areas of recruitment marketing, career placement, talent acquisition, client relations, and marketing support. She's passionate about creating cohesive and lasting relationships while striving to connect world-class organizations with superior talent. Her past roles include being a freelance writer and part of the recruiting branding team at Oracle. Hey, Lindsay, welcome to the show. Welcome to RecTech.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. And the reason I've asked Lindsay to come on, audience, is so we can talk about kind of her day-to-day social recruiting activities and how that impacts recruiting overall. You know, I think with social becoming more important these days for employer branding, for sourcing, and of course, applicant flow, applicant traffic to your jobs. I think it's time, especially for the larger companies who have that that budget, that resource available, to hire someone specifically to manage the big channels, such as Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and even Snapchat if you want to. There's so much you can do on these channels that it really should be a full-time recruiting position, according to in my opinion at least. And I hope you agree too, Lindsay, right?
Absolutely.
So tell me, what do you do? Describe your 9 to 5, if you could, for us to start.
Sure, happy to. So my 9 to 5, I would say, predominantly consists of building those relationships, really kind of uncovering the stories that exist here. So that really calls for gaining an understanding of what we do on the day-to-day across all of the different portfolios, making sure that folks are aware of the resources that are available, and most importantly, kind of getting to the bottom of what it's like to work in their space on the day-to-day.
Yeah.
So a big part of what I do is really kind of tapping into those relationships. Then, finding a unique and fun way that's true to the brand to kind of present those stories in a compelling way, and also making sure that I'm up to date on the different platforms that we're tapping into, and ensuring that the stories that we do push out aren't just true to the brand, but are pushed out in a way that's going to resonate with our audiences. So it's really important that I understand the business, but I also understand the space that is fairly new to some of the people here. So it's my job to make sure that they understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and get them excited about getting involved.
Yeah. I'm curious, what's the last story you just kind of researched and pushed out to your channels? What was that about?
Sure. So the most recent, it was really kind of tapping into the more innovative space. So I think a lot of companies right now are really trying to unveil what they do by way of innovation. We're always talking about what's next, setting our sights toward the future. And I think a big issue or a big challenge in the regulated space specifically is letting candidates know or audience members know that, there are more opportunities that exist here. We're doing a lot more in this space than you might have thought in the past. So I'll speak specifically to insurance, and you might assume that if you're not in the underwriting or the risk control space, or that's not your expertise, there's not a place for you within these certain companies. And that's just not true. So the work that we're doing now is to kind of demystify that a bit and to showcase the work that we're doing in spaces like AI and big tech and big data, and making sure that we're telling that story in an accurate way and giving a stage to that subject matter. So that's been a really big focus most recently, which I'm sure is probably quite true for a lot of companies out there.
Yeah, so you're really kind of like you're a storyteller, but you're kind of like a reporter inside the company. Is that an apt way of describing you?
That's a great way to describe this job, I think, in general. I think speaking to what we do on the 9 to 5, and I don't want to necessarily overgeneralize here, but, I think there's this assumption that you push out a tweet a couple of times a day, you hit publish on a Facebook platform, and that's really what a social media or a community manager's job is. But in all reality, we're doing the digging. We got to make sure that we're going beyond the high level, it's collaborative, it's hip, it's cool, we're working with some big tech, but no, there's a lot more to it than that, so that's exactly how I would describe the day-to-day. I think you wear several hats in this space, and a reporting role is definitely a big piece of that.
Okay. What are the major channels you're working with today? I'm assuming LinkedIn and the Facebooks, but what else is in your kind of day-to-day activity channel?
We are focused on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter as of right now. I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned along the way is that, you don't necessarily have to go big when you step into this territory. I think there's a lot of pressure to be on like the hip, cool channels and get out there before your competitors do, or if they're out there, you need to be out there. But it's okay to kind of approach this stuff in phases, find your footing a bit, and then set your sights toward the stages that make sense for you and that you're ready for. So that for us most recently was Instagram, which is really exciting.
Yeah. I want to talk about Instagram later on, but how are you monitoring all this? Are you have multiple screens open with each of these platforms feeds? Tell me more about how you're kind of monitoring what's happening in the social media channels.
Sure. So I mostly use Sprinkler to kind of listen to what's going on out there on our channels, pay
Sprinkler?
attention to the type of engagement that's coming through. Yep. We use Sprinkler quite a bit, and that's how we manage our content. Multiple screens, yes, constantly kind of tapping into our channels several times throughout the course of the day. We have alerts set up, so we're kind of in the know when people are referencing the brand or responding to the content that we're pushing out.
Okay. What's a successful day for you like? Do you have an example of what that might be?
I think a successful day for me, and this kind of relates to the time that I've spent across a few different companies, but specifically in the here and now, a successful day for me is seeing people get really excited about the social media stuff. Our level of expertise as an organization is kind of all over the board, so there's a lot of questions about what can we post, how do we do that, what type of content are you looking for us to push out, and I think I've always been a proponent of this notion that the best content always comes from within, right? So you want it to come from your team members as opposed to just your social media corporate channels. So a successful day for me is tracking our branded hashtag and seeing that team members are actually getting more and more comfortable with pushing out their own content and seeing them go beyond their LinkedIn feeds and tap into different channels that had otherwise not been familiar to them. That to me is really exciting. And to see them get excited about the stories that we're telling out there and sending that note that says, we're really pumped that you were able to highlight our team in such a compelling way and telling our story. People still get really excited about that stuff. So that's a win in my book.
Okay. Are you actively also encouraging your company's employees to also share the content you're creating and liking and stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Most of the engagement, I think, needs to come from your team members within in order for the people that you're trying to reach to see it and to react to it. So there is an entire strategy dedicated to that internal engagement, getting them, again, familiar, getting them comfortable, letting them know that the posts are out there, And there's this degree of accountability, I think, that needs to go hand in hand with that approach. So I think it really helps when you kind of have a village behind this stuff. So as opposed to just the message coming from you saying, please go ahead and like that stuff, and we are live now, please like it, share it, push it out to your own channels. There's leadership that's involved in that conversation, and I think that's really helpful in kind of getting folks on board and getting more and more acquainted with the space and making it more of a priority to get out there and share the content with their networks. Yeah. So absolutely.
You've been doing this for a while now. I mean, what mistakes do you see other companies making as far as leveraging social media for recruiting? Does anything stand out to you?
Good question. I think, and this was a misconception of my own when I first started in this space, and I see companies still kind of run into this territory, but I think the biggest moment is really around this tendency to embrace hashtags or campaigns or even channels that aren't necessarily true to your brand or won't necessarily resonate with your audiences. And I'll give you an example. Okay. Once upon a time, when I first started out in this space, I was taking a reactionary approach to social media. So I would, log on in the morning and go onto Twitter, Instagram, see what was trending. And if it was something like, let's just say Sunglass Day, I would hurry and create content, fun employee pictures wearing sunglasses, and push it out as fast as I could so I could hop on that engagement train and kind of piggyback off the momentum that was already set. And if other brands were doing it, of course, I should be doing it too, or we should be doing it too. And that's a social misconception. I think when you start to react to what's trending that day, it becomes a less and less prepared approach, and it becomes less and less true to your brand. So I think being thoughtful as opposed to reactionary is really important. And so when I see brands kind of push out content that doesn't necessarily align, or you could tell it was just kind of surface level in terms of what they were trying to gain from that content, I think that is not worth the stress that it takes to make that happen. Because as you know, there's a processes that goes into the content creation. You got to tap into your management system, push that stuff out, get the employees on board. A lot of work goes into creating this content. So I'd rather be prepared and tap into things that make sense for the brand, whether it's Nurse Appreciation Week or it's Claim Representative Week, whatever the case might be. I'd rather spend our time and our resources on creating that type of content, being prepared the month prior to push that out, knowing that we did the best that we could in terms of creating compelling content, as opposed to this, last minute, 11th hour, we got to get this out because so-and-so just posted and we should be doing that too. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it should be more natural, authentic, right, is what you're saying here?
Exactly, yeah.
Nice. Speaking of content, I mean, how much are you creating on a daily and weekly basis, would you say? I mean, is it a couple pieces a day? Is it more than that, less than that? Tell me more about that overall strategy.
Sure. It's a couple of pieces a day now at this point. When I was at Oracle, we had a pretty mature content calendar. We were posting multiple times a day, and it was dependent upon the traffic that we were seeing from different regions. But when we first started out in this most recent journey, it was, we did our best to push out a couple of posts a week. And at the time, it made sense. Now that we've kind of found our footing, it's multiple posts several times a day, if it makes sense. Again, if it's a reach, and we just don't have the content to fill the calendar that month, we won't post. It's better to say nothing, I think, than to try to fill the air. Again, back to kind of hopping on that bandwagon technique that just really doesn't make sense. But we try to fill our calendar a month ahead so that we're prepared and we're posting several times a week so we can capitalize upon that time that we tend to see the most traffic.
Yeah, I like that tip. If you don't have anything to say, don't say anything. It's less is more sometimes. Another reason I ask that the reach question is more because of I don't know if you've read about the recent Facebook newsfeed changes that were happening. It's much better now to post less on Facebook and also post originally as far as uploading content directly onto the platform itself in order to get more reach. So are you aware of those types of changes happening in the market?
Oh, yeah. And, I think it's really important to stay on top of that stuff. And I think oftentimes, too, and back to that question around what do we see brands doing that may be missing the mark, so to speak, I think it's taking the same approach to every channel that folks kind of stumble. We try our best as social media managers in general, I think, to diversify our channel flow a little bit. And some content's going to make sense for Facebook. Some content schedules are going to make sense for Facebook. Might not make sense for Instagram and vice versa. So I think it's really important to solidify a strategy meant for each platform that you're most active on. And it might not be the same across the board. So really important to kind of keep up with the latest developments, especially in the age that we're in now when it comes to data and protecting that data and the effects on news feeds and the new aggregators. I think it's really important to just be in the know when it comes to that. And it's okay to post on one channel pretty heavily and not so much on another. You're really going to have to watch that engagement, and that's where your metrics come in. And I think that's why it's so important to define what those metrics are going to be early on, and to keep tabs on that to see what's working, what's not, and evolve as you go. So that's also an important lesson learned along the way.
Nice. By the way, listeners, I did a live webinar a couple months ago about the Facebook newsfeed changes. You can go watch it for free. It's at rectechlive.com. How much video are you leveraging, Lindsay? Any at all?
Not much just yet. I think we're in this phase now where we've gotten comfortable in certain spaces, and we've finessed our content strategy quite a bit. So I think that'll be next phase. During my time at Oracle, video was more prevalent. I will be the first or among the first people to or just a big proponent of how important video is. I think we'll probably see more and more of that as we find our groove across these different channels.
Gotcha. Have you guys tried, I'm curious, posting any jobs on the new Facebook jobs board yet? Is that
No, but I know a few brands, not just yet, but I know a few brands that are having some success in that space. Yeah.
Have you, could you expand on that? Do you know what types of jobs are posting, things like that at all, or they're having success with?
I've seen quite a few like developer jobs, tech jobs, specific to the Facebook job board. I think those are the ones that I see most prevalent, and then followed up by some sales positions. I see quite a bit of those postings out there as well. And again, I think it works for some brands. I think some of the brands that I've seen post most frequently are the ones that are in like the startup space or smaller scale. They have a little more leeway with their job postings. So I see quite a bit come through on the side of development and big tech.
Nice. Okay. You mentioned Sprinkler as far as one of your social media tools. Can you just explain what that tool does? And then I'm curious, any other tools that are part of your toolbox today?
Sprinkler is the biggest tool for us, the one that we use most frequently, and we use that to schedule content and manage content and approvals. So we'll upload our content there. Our approvers who have access will review, push it through, and then we schedule accordingly. So that's really what we use Sprinkler for, in addition to reporting capabilities. So listening in on, again, what's being said about our brand out there, following hashtags, creating reports so that we can stay in tune with what's going on as far as what's trending and the responses that we're seeing out there on social media. So we leverage that quite a bit. And then, of course, we have our own internal process around monitoring and escalation. But Sprinkler is the main tool for us on the day-to-day.
Okay. Anything else that you might use out there that you want to share with the audience?
On a personal level, I use Hootsuite quite a bit.
Hootsuite? Okay.
Just different apps. Yep, just different apps like Content Fire, anything that allows for scheduling in advance, I think behooves us all. It helps us to be a little more planful, and I know that it's sometimes challenging to squeeze in those tweets on the day-to-day. I'm trying to get better about that, but Hootsuite is the biggest one for me, the one that I tap into most often in order to push that content out and schedule it ahead of time.
Okay. You mentioned, I think you said you recently started using Instagram as a channel. Is that correct?
Yeah, just about a month and a half ago.
Okay, excellent. So tell me, how's it going so far? What have you learned about recruiting on Instagram there or branding on Instagram? Give us some initial thoughts.
Sure. So actually, we use Instagram pretty frequently at Oracle. We were a little further along as far as our strategy within the Instagram space and tapping into that channel. So I'll speak to some of the lessons that I learned during my time at Oracle, if that's all right. Again, I think Instagram being so visually compelling, it just really ups the ante when it comes to the importance of the quality of your pictures and really paying attention to what folks are responding to, what gets less and less engagement, what filters work, what time of day. Those are all things that you want to pay attention to, especially when you're navigating a new space. As far as recruiting, I think Instagram being as visually or as reliant on strong visuals as it is, I think you need to be cognizant around, what you're asking your audience to do. So are you looking to increase your following? Are you looking for that engagement? Or are you looking for, the follow through? Are you looking for someone to see a post and then go ahead and submit an application? So I think you need to kind of define that early on. And again, it's okay if you're just looking to increase your engagement and use it as a branding tool. And if it stops there, it stops there. But if you want them to eventually submit an application or go to a website or another digital asset to learn more, how do you weave that strategy into that platform? I think it's really important to kind of have that understanding going into this. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, we'll push out content centered on a particular topic or a particular portfolio, and then the call to action comes in. So maybe by the fourth or the fifth post, we're asking them to go ahead and complete an action. It's important to, as fun as that platform is and as visually compelling and reliant it is, it's really important that you kind of have a clear understanding of what you're trying to accomplish with the use of that channel. I know at first, being new to the space and Instagram being new at the time, I thought, isn't that fun? What a great branding tool. We can have some fun with this. And while you can, especially now with, the stories and the highlights and all of that stuff, mm-hmm. you can still have fun with it. But I think just social in general really calls for a deeper strategy, and it's really important that you're able to kind of define the value at the end of the day. So keeping that in mind, I think you still have to kind of take that thoughtful approach, the same one that you take on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, etc.
It sounds like you're really the Instagram channel is more for, you're trying to build your followers up right now. I'm concentrating on the branding piece. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Yep. I think in the early stages anywhere, that's okay to kind of admit that. If you're not quite sure what the eventual call to action is going to be or what you're really trying to accomplish, it's okay to focus your efforts on building the following and that engagement, and then moving more into the solidified KPIs and the ROI that you're going to eventually report on for your leadership. It's okay to focus on those social diagnostics to get started, and that's the approach I've taken a few times in a few different places, and it makes sense. You're finding your footing, you're figuring out what works, and I think that's the most fun when it comes to social is figuring out what sticks. It's a great test ground for content, for storytelling, what works, what doesn't, and helping that to kind of lead the way in terms of how you're going to define yourself on these digital platforms. Yeah.
Give me a couple examples of what you're sharing on Instagram as far as pictures goes. What are they of?
Yeah, as far as the visual stuff, anything that highlights a day in the life. So anything that shows a team having fun or what it's really like to work in this space. That's always great content. If you want to highlight some of your office space, that always makes for a really fun Travel Tuesday. If you want to highlight a wellness campaign, if your company treats that as a priority, get a team sporting event up there, or someone working out after hours or taking part in a 5K on behalf of the company, whatever they might be doing by way of that program, highlight that stuff. That's all fair game, and that's all content that your applicants and your prospective candidates want to see. Mm-hmm. I think that's what really resonates, especially with rising talent, especially with folks who might be, either graduating or they might be mid-level career and they're thinking about a change. If they're active on these spaces, which they are, and the data supports that, promote your brand authentically, promote the fun that you're having. Day in the life stuff goes a long way. So that might be, a fun workspace, an office space, team activity, all fair game. So that's really what we're trying to highlight now. I think, there are a lot of assumptions about certain brands out there, especially in the regulated space, and it's an opportunity to really kind of shine a light on the fun that's being had that might not be common knowledge for folks. So I would recommend utilizing Instagram specifically for that because it is so visually, it relies so heavily on visuals.
I know you work for a big company. We can't say the name, of course, but I'm curious, when you first started on the job, what kind of rules did they set down for you as far as what you can and cannot post? Can you just give us a little guidance there, around kind of the rules of all this stuff?
Yeah, sure. So if it's okay by you, I'm going to speak a little more broadly to the parameters you kind of need to build before you really dive into this stuff. And of course, we'll highlight some of the do's and don'ts from a regulation standpoint. But I think social media, when you've kind of agreed to that commitment, you're going to build out this stuff. it's really important to build the infrastructure. It'll vary depending on your brand. It'll vary depending on how much leeway you have out there. A startup is going to differ quite a bit from a Fortune 100 or specifically a regulated industry. But it's really important to kind of put down on paper what your strategy looks like. So if you have rules around what to post, what you can't post, if your partners are asking you for a plan around escalation, put that down on paper. What's your plan for, negative commentary out there? How are you going to react to positive commentary out there? What are you going to do if X happens? What's your response? So putting that escalation roadmap on paper, I think, is the first step in really kind of getting the stuff off the ground and getting the buy-in that you need to obtain to get this in motion. Secondly, I think, defining your content strategy is really crucial too. What does your content need to say about your brand? What rules and regulations do you have to live and breathe by on the day-to-day? What are you trying to accomplish through the use of these channels? Where are you going to focus your energies? Getting all of that kind of built out, and then, tapping into these different channels and creating the content is kind of what comes after. As far as, what we ask employees to say, what we ask them to avoid saying, I think anything that's truthful to their experience, truthful to what they do on the day-to-day is, again, fair game. I think we try to avoid being overly braggadocious, so to speak. We want the brand to kind of speak for itself. We want the stories to kind of speak for themselves. So if you're capturing a moment that you've had with your team out there on these channels, highlight that, but avoid saying things like, oh, we're the best team in the industry. Let the content kind of speak for itself. It's a little tricky when you turn inward and ask your employees to start being kind of brand ambassadors. You got to make sure that what you're asking of them is made clear from the get-go. Making sure that their presence out there on social media is a positive reflection of what you're trying to relay on these channels, and making it known, first and foremost, that we have a policy to live by. This is what it looks like. Are you able to kind of commit to that? I think is the first step in securing your employee participation. And if they simply can't, then you kind of stick to give us some great content that we can post onto our own channels. We'll go that way instead of having them kind of speak on behalf of the brand.
Yeah.
But making that policy known up front is pretty crucial to making sure that the content is positive and it's going to be perceived the right way.
Excellent. Great advice there. Do you guys have your own career hashtag that you've created for yourselves?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think when it comes to creating hashtags, you're always going to have the team members just across different lines of business who are going to want their own. It's kind of like this cool, novel additive that they're going to want to take ownership of, and that's great. I love that enthusiasm. But again, you kind of have to back it with some data. So I'll speak again to the experience at Oracle. You might notice the hashtag Explore Oracle out there, and that came from a lot of data collection around, what resonates, where's that SEO, how is it going to add value, and tying that into the content. And so start there, kind of figure out what makes sense for your brand, what you're trying to say, and figure out what types of terms are going to get the best results, and then create your hashtag around that. You can have a lot of fun with that. But sometimes you'll see companies out there be program specific. So you might see, company name intern. You might see something like Explore Oracle or Life at, whatever the case might be. That's usually the product of doing some research around, again, what's going to make sense for you as far as SEO. But have fun with it. You can get as program specific as you want. I would watch out for creating too many. It gets a little confusing for your followers out there. But definitely nail down a few that, again, it's going to speak to your audience and going to be true to your brand. You can have fun with that. And it also helps with tracking, too. If you want to kind of keep tabs on what's being said about your brand, which employees are taking an active part in posting, creating that hashtag helps you kind of keep tabs on all of that.
Awesome. Good stuff. Let's take a quick break, audience, so I can tell you about our other sponsor today, RoboRecruiter, and their recruiting chatbot technology. You got any chatbots there yet, Lindsay?
Not just yet, but it's definitely been in the subject matter of a lot of conversation, so stay tuned.
Nice. Well, RoboRecruiter's job vet campaigns help recruiters vet and select candidates for particular roles. They make it easy to quickly build conversations that are both personalized to each user, such as asking them pre-screening questions before they apply. And you can start prioritizing top candidates within minutes through RoboRecruiter. Check them out at roborecruiter.ai. So, Lindsay, what's been your most successful post so far as in terms of reach or engagement that you've done that could be from a past role at Oracle or your current company. There's one. Do you remember one that really kind of got a little bit of virality in it?
Yeah, I Love My Job stands out, and I hope I can use this time to give a shout out to Celinda Appleby, who is my manager over at Oracle. This is
you work with Celinda.
Our love child. Yeah,
I know Celinda. Okay.
She definitely kind of got me to where I am. I am the first to say that. She was my first boss in this full-time gig in the employer branding space, and learned a lot from her at our time together, during our time together. But this was kind of our brainchild. I Love My Job really took off during my time at Oracle. And, it went through a few iterations, but we finally found our groove with this I Love My Job hashtag. And it was a global campaign, one that gave employees the opportunity to speak to what it is they love about their job. And, that might sound pretty generic, but we got to the nitty-gritty. We were asking them to go deep as far as how their time at Oracle has affected them on a personal and professional level, and it really sets off. Had some strong visuals tied to that, built some blogs from that. I think any successful campaign offers opportunity to go beyond just your social posts, right? So if you can build from it, it will most likely get the results that you're looking for in terms of engagement, and employees got really excited about that. We saw a lot of great response. So I think that's the campaign thus far that I'm most proud of.
Yeah, I think social media overall, social recruiting is just underutilized at most companies out there. And I think if they can get that resource, it's really there's a lot of ROI there, in my opinion, Lindsay. Not only from the branding side, but even sourcing. I think it's highly underutilized for sourcing. I could source all day on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram if I wanted to. I mean, there's literally that much, that many people out there to look at and connect with. Have you done any kind of sourcing in that respect as well?
Oh, yeah. Constantly kind of looking to these platforms to uncover talent that I don't think we'd otherwise connect with. So quite a bit of sourcing. And I think to your point, this is a full-time job.
Yeah.
And sometimes it requires even, more than just one social media manager, depending on the size of your company. And I think there is this misconception that, how hard is it to schedule a tweet a couple of times a day? It's so much deeper than that. There's a lot of research that goes into this, a lot of internal work that goes into this, and storytelling and metric tracking and defining your strategy. It's a big lift. So if you have a company that is interested in the space, or you want to branch out a bit in terms of social media and utilizing it for all that the purpose it serves, you definitely have to have someone whose full-time focus is this space. It goes a long way. Nice.
Well, Lindsay, we appreciate the time today. I thank you very much for joining me, and tell the listeners how to connect with you online.
Sure. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at lparks2387, and of course on LinkedIn. Look forward to connecting.
All right. We'll link to you in the show notes. So thanks again for your time. That's going to do it for this edition of the RegTech Podcast. Thanks again to our sponsors, HireTool and RoboRecruiter. Don't forget you subscribe to the show via iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and Stitcher Radio. And I hope you're subscribed, Lindsay, and we'll see you next time, audience. Take care.
Another episode of RegTech is in the books. Follow Chris on Twitter at Chris Russell, or visit regtechmedia.com, where you can find the audio and links for this show on our blog. RegTech Media helps both HR tech firms and employers to get more clients or candidates through our consulting practice and online tools. So be sure to check out our sites like recruiting headlines, job fairing, and more to stay up to date on what's happening in recruiting. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon on the next episode of RegTech, the Recruiting Technology Podcast.